At 75, I've buried friends who were richer than me, healthier than me, better connected than me. And I've watched others, ordinary people, live with a quiet dignity that nobody could take from them. The difference? It was never about what they had. It was about one decision they made, early and firmly, about where they placed their trust. You were taught a beautiful lie. Not a cruel one. Not one that anyone handed you with bad intentions. The people who told it to you believed it themselves, deeply, completely. They passed it on the way you pass down a family recipe or a prayer, with love, with certainty, with the best of everything they had. From the moment you were old enough to understand words, the lesson was simple. Stay close to the right people, and you will be safe. Love your family, trust the ones who share your name, and the world will have a soft place for you when things get hard. That was the promise. And for a long time, it felt real, because you wanted it to be real. Because wanting it to be real is the most human thing there is. But somewhere along the road, and if you are honest with yourself, you know exactly when it started, you felt it. Not all at once. It never comes all at once. It starts as something small, a moment where you expected someone to stand beside you and they didn't, a silence where there should have been words, a decision made about your life, without you, by someone who claimed to love you. You told yourself it was nothing. You found reasons, you offered excuses on their behalf, because protecting the image you had of them felt easier than sitting with what you had just seen. But the feeling stayed, and the moments kept coming, quietly, consistently, like water finding its way through stone, not dramatic, not violent, just patient and certain. And over time, something inside you began to shift. You stopped hearing only their words and started watching their patterns. Because words are the easiest thing in the world to give. Anyone can say they care. Anyone can promise to be there. It costs nothing. But showing up when there is nothing to gain, that costs something. And that is where you begin to see the truth of a person. I want to be clear about something. Seeing that truth is not the same as losing faith in people. I have not lost faith in people. What I lost was a more fragile thing, the belief that being loved automatically means being protected. That closeness is the same as loyalty, that sharing a history or a bloodline or decades of your life with someone means they will always choose you when it matters. Those are not the same thing. And learning the difference, as painful as it is not bitterness settling in. It is clarity finally arriving. And clarity at any age is worth whatever it cost you to earn it. There is something nobody warns you about when you are young and full of goodness. Being kind is not enough on its own, and I do not say that to diminish kindness. I say it because I spent the better part of my life learning it the hard way. I was generous. Genuinely, completely generous. Not because I wanted something in return, not because I was keeping score, but because it felt right. Because giving felt like love made visible. I gave my time when I had very little of it. I gave my understanding to people who had not earned it. I gave my silence when I should have spoken. And I gave my forgiveness before it was even asked for. And for years, I wore that as a kind of quiet pride. What I did not understand then, what took me far too long to see, is that every time you give without limit, you are not just being generous. You are sending a message, not in words, not in anything deliberate, but in what you allow. You teach people what you are willing to accept. Every time you absorbed someone's carelessness and said nothing, you taught them that your silence was guaranteed. Every time you forgave before they even thought to apologize, you taught them that your forgiveness had no conditions. Every time you showed up for someone who never once showed up for you, you taught them that your presence could be taken for granted. Not because they were calculating, not because they sat down and decided to use you, but because people, all of us, settle into what is comfortable. And if giving you very little still gets them everything they need from you, why would they ever reach further? That is the part that quietly breaks something in you, not the betrayal of a villain, just the slow, unremarkable settling, the steady drift of someone taking the shape of what you allowed them to be. I do not regret the kindness itself. I want to be honest about that. Kindness is still one of the finest things a person can carry through this world. But kindness without self-respect at its center is not virtue. It is an open door with no lock, and eventually the wrong things walk through it. The man who gives endlessly without ever asking to be valued in return is not generous. He is afraid that setting a limit will cost him the very love he has been working so hard to keep. And that fear, more than any person, is what quietly empties you. We spend our whole lives waiting for the dramatic moment, the moment that will finally show us who someone really is. We imagine it will come in a crisis, some great test, some defining hour where people either rise or disappear, and at last we will know. We hold on to that idea because it gives us permission to keep believing in people who have already, quietly, shown us something different. We tell ourselves, I haven't seen the worst of them yet, so I can't judge. We tell ourselves, when it really matters, they will come through. And so we wait. We keep waiting for the dramatic moment that for most people never arrives. But here is what 75 years of watching people has taught me. The dramatic moment is a distraction. The real information was always in the small ones. The tiny, unremarkable, easy-to-miss moments that happen every single ordinary day. Whether someone remembers what hurt you last month, or whether they have already moved on as if it never happened. Whether they check on you when things are quiet and there is nothing exciting happening in your life, or whether they only appear when there is something in it for them. Whether they treat you with the same consideration when they are comfortable and secure as they do when they need something from you. Those moments, small, forgettable, easily explained away, are the whole story. Everything else is performance. I have known people who could rise magnificently in a visible crisis, who would show up with tears in their eyes, with grand gestures, with everything the moment seemed to call for. And yet in the long, ordinary stretch of life between crises, they were absent, distracted, indifferent to the quieter needs that do not come with an audience. And I have known others who never once made a grand gesture in their lives, but who were simply, steadily, reliably there, year after year, in the unremarkable Tuesday afternoons of life, without applause, without anyone watching, without anything to gain. I learned to trust the second kind, because consistency in the small things is not something you can fake for long. A person can perform care for a season. They cannot perform it every Tuesday for 20 years. So stop waiting for the defining moment to tell you who someone is. Pay attention to the ordinary ones. Notice who remembers. Notice who returns. Notice how someone treats you when the situation costs them nothing and when it costs them something. The gap between those two things will tell you more than any crisis ever could. The small moments are not the footnotes. They are the whole book. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that nobody talks about. It is not the exhaustion of working too hard or sleeping too little. It is the exhaustion that comes from holding on to something that has already ended, from gripping tightly to a version of a relationship, a version of a person that no longer exists, and pouring your energy every single day into pretending that it does. I know that exhaustion. I lived inside it for longer than I care to admit, and for a long time I called it loyalty. I called it love. I told myself that staying, enduring, continuing to show up no matter what I received in return was the mark of a person with strong character, that walking away would mean I had failed somehow, that letting go was a kind of defeat. What I did not understand then is that there is a very fine line between loyalty and fear, and I had been standing on the wrong side of it for years. Because the truth, the honest and uncomfortable truth, is that most of the time when we refuse to let go of something that is quietly wearing us down, it is not because we are strong. It is because we are afraid. Afraid of the empty space that will follow. Afraid of facing the reality that what we believed was solid was never quite what we thought it was. Afraid of starting over at a stage of life when starting over feels like an admission of something. And so we stay. We adjust our expectations quietly, privately, without telling anyone. We learn to need less. We learn to feel less. And we call that growth when really it is just a slow, dignified surrender. I am not telling you to abandon people carelessly. I am not telling you that difficulty in a relationship means you should walk away. Difficulty is not the signal. The signal is something quieter than difficulty. It is the steady, persistent feeling that you are the only one holding the weight, that you have explained yourself to the same person so many times that the words have lost their meaning, that the relationship has become something you maintain out of history and habit rather than something that genuinely feeds you. When you feel that, not once, not in a bad week, but consistently over time, that is not a reason to try harder. That is a reason to look honestly at what you are holding and ask yourself whether it is still real, because not everything that fades is a loss. Some of it is simply a release, and release when it finally comes does not feel like defeat. It feels like breathing again for the first time in years. There is a word that people my age are made to feel uncomfortable about: independence. Somewhere along the way, the world decided that wanting to remain independent as you get older is a sign of stubbornness, of pride, of an unwillingness to accept help gracefully. I have heard it said, gently and not so gently, that holding on to your own decisions, your own finances, your own daily choices, is somehow selfish, that the loving thing, the wise thing, is to let the people around you carry more of the weight, to hand things over, to trust. And I understand where that idea comes from. I do. There is a version of it that is true. None of us were built to carry everything alone, and accepting help when you genuinely need it is not weakness. But there is a vast difference between accepting help and surrendering control. And that difference matters more than most people are willing to say out loud. I have watched good people, strong, careful, responsible people who spent their entire lives building something solid, hand over that something in exchange for closeness, for the feeling of being needed, for the comfort of believing that giving away control would guarantee them a place at the table, a voice in the room, a steady hand nearby when things got difficult. And sometimes it worked. I will not pretend otherwise. But more times than I can count, it did not. Not because anyone planned to hurt them, not because their family was cruel or their friends were dishonest, but because life shifts. Priorities move. The person who promised to be there gets pulled in directions they did not anticipate. And when that happens, when the circumstances change the way circumstances always eventually do, the person who gave everything away finds themselves in a position they never once imagined. Less say in their own days, less dignity in the small choices, less ability to redirect their own life when the direction stops feeling right. That is a particular kind of pain, because it was not taken from them. It was given. With love, with trust, with the purest of intentions, and still it left them diminished. So I say this not as a warning born from bitterness, but as something I wish someone had looked me in the eye and said clearly when I was still young enough to build the habit. Keep your voice in your own life, not some of it, not a portion of it. Your voice, your choices, your ability to wake up in the morning and decide for yourself what the day will hold and where your resources will go. Because the moment you give that away, you do not just lose control, you lose yourself.